Today we're going to talk about the Scotch Brite user guide. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the preparing of the surface of the metal to receive the paint. We're going to talk about the materials you might use for that process. Understand that the Scotch Brite user guide covers those details as well as the details of application and the details of what will happen when you actually fire up the unit. When we start talking about the materials you need to use for preparation on the stove, we're going to talk about first safety. And the first safety item that we want to be sure we have when we do any of this work is our safety glasses. So when you're working with paint or when you're working with any of these things where you're sanding or grinding on the metal, you want to be sure to wear your safety glasses the entire time. The other thing that's nice to have for your protection is a long sleeve shirt. So you want to have a shirt that's going to protect your arms, again, from those metal flakes that might come off as you sand, or also for any of the solvents that you might be using in this preparation process. And then the third item for safety purposes that I would recommend, especially if you're going to use any of the solvents such as acetone or lacquer thinner, is to have a set of good quality gloves that are going to protect your skin, protect your hands when you use those products. So safety first, definitely want to have those safety glasses. A long sleeve shirt is very handy, and of course the gloves if you're going to work with any of the chemicals. Let's start with those chemicals that you might be using and talk a little bit about those chemicals. The milder of the two is our acetone. The acetone product is available in smaller quantities. I have a gallon quantity here. It's available in smaller quantities for most paint stores and building supply houses. And it's a very easy solvent to use, but it does require some care and use. And so you definitely want to be sure you read the instructions on the can as well as the warnings about how to safely use the product. One of the things when using solvents you want to be sure is to be sure to avoid open flame or source of spark. A more aggressive solvent that's available and used in this process is Lacquer Thinner. Lacquer Thinner is also a product that you definitely want to take the time to read the instructions on the can and the warnings about how to use the product. The vapors from this product are quite flammable, and you do definitely want to take great care with those products in terms of source of spark or any kind of ignition source for this. You would use the lacquer thinner, the acetone, as a wipe down at the end of the process. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the details. Some of the things that you might be doing when you're working with the preparation of the metal is you're going to be working possibly with some kind of abrasive pad. These are plastic. They're kind of like your Scotch Brite brand pads, and there are different coarse factors of these pads that you can use, and they'll be used either to scuff up a new surface, or they can be used to help remove old paint in combination with a solvent such as the lacquer thinner. Another type of abrasion that's commonly used on preparing your stove surface or your pipe surface is sandpaper. And sandpaper comes in various grits. That's the way that the product that is abrasive on them. And they're measured in numbers. The products have 220 grit, 180 grit, 120 grit. Those are common grit sandpapers that you would use for this process. When scuffing up the surface, you don't need much abrasion, so you can use a lighter or fine grit sandpaper to do a scuffing. But if you're trying to remove rust, you'll probably use a more coarse grit product and be aggressive with it to get that rust off. Speaking of rust and removing debris from the stove surface or stovepipe, we want you to be able to use something that is quite aggressive, and that is a wire brush. And this is a wire brush that fits onto a drill that you can use then and use the power of the drill to drive that wire brush and literally remove that rust or other debris from the surface. This will get you quite a clean surface. When using the wire brush, we do recommend that you follow that with a wipe down, and typically a wipe down with acetone to give you a nice clean surface to work with. In talking about working with the wipe down, just real quick, I want to mention you'll want to use a clean white rag. You don't want to use any colored rags. The colored rags will leave dye on your surface. So you want to use a clean white rag. You can get these commonly at any building supply store or any paint store. And again, they're relatively inexpensive and very easy to use. Probably get a whole bag of those to have them available for other projects as well. back real quick to abrading or getting things off the surface. Another common tool used for that purpose is a wire brush. And the wire brush can give you some aggressive work to get rust off. Rust is very important to be removed. You don't want any rust on that surface when you go to paint with that product. The last things we want to talk about is that final prep or wipe down of that surface. Wiping down that surface with the Stove Brite paint prep is a very easy way to get a nice clean surface. It evaporates in a few minutes and you're ready then to use the Stove Brite high temp paint to paint your project. In summary, what you want to do is get yourself the right materials to do the job. We'll talk specifically about rust removal. We'll talk specifically about painting or preparing to paint a surface that's already been previously painted. And we'll also be talking more about how those things work best for you to avoid problems with your finish. Again, safety first. Remember those safety glasses when doing the project. And remember, you can contact Stove Brite at stovebrite.com, or you can give us a call anytime at 1-800-537-7201.